Reveal season is upon us, and this is my favorite time in Runeterra. Now, I know I've said that in the past, but I think specifically when it comes to a season of Runeterra, this week in particular is my absolute favorite because we get the reveals, and that means you get a Christmas present every day. But also, we're in that cool period where the open rounds for the seasonal event have finished. We know who the top competitors are going to be at the actual tournaments themselves. And so there's all of that hype leading up to the cool competitive event, as well as getting to see the new expansion. Now, our new expansion is going to feature 3 new champions. There was also like an animated trailer that went with this, just like the last time. The 3 champions that are coming this time around, we already know are going to be Rek'Sai, Pyke, and Ekko. And I'm really excited for Ekko, but the others also potentially have me excited. Now, just like the last time, we get 3 new cards as like teasers for the archetypes that their champions are going to bring with them. But I'm starting with this graphic first, as opposed to the one that has all of the reveals, because we got a new keyword today as well. So we're going to start with Rek'Sai Hatchling here. This is a 1-cost 1/1. Yes, I know I'm covering it. It's a 1-cost 1/1 Shurima follower. It has the lurker tag, and I'm gonna come back to that in a minute. It also has fearsome and the new keyword lurk. So the new keyword says, when you attack while I am on top of your deck, I lurk, granting lurker allies everywhere +1/+0 max once per round. Now, a lot to unpack here. We're gonna start with the lurker tag real quick. I want to circle back to that. This is interesting to me because this is a tag just like dragons, just like sea monsters, just like celestials. And that means that we could see the lurk keyword on things that are not lurkers. And there are obviously ways that that can happen, even if there are no cards that do that. If there's no cards that give things lurk or grant things lurk or whatever, we could see, you know, stuff like Zoe granting it to all of your units. But specifically it says grant lurker allies everywhere, not all allies with the lurk keyword. So there's also a chance that we could have a big number of lurker units and not all of them may have the lurk keyword. So we need to kind of keep this in mind as far as I'm concerned, because that is a really important tag. Now, another thing I want to point out here is this is max once per round, and this actually gives me a lot of hope. Now, you might be saying, why? Why does that give you hope? That actually sounds bad because now this mechanic is worse, but that means that this was incredibly powerful, so powerful in fact that they had to pre-nerf it because somebody very clearly abused this with Rally and Blade Dance and everything else. And a powerful archetype that has already been pre-nerfed is also one that is likely to have been tested a lot. This is my hope. Anyway, again, I'm just saying this is what gives me hope. Something that's been tested a lot, and I suspect it will still end up being competitive because they clearly focused on it during the balancing portion of design. Now, let's talk about the actual keyword and the design and everything else. Your gut instinct might be that this is going to be too slow, and it may or may not be. Your gut instinct might be that it is an uninteresting archetype, and I do think there is some danger there. I think that that has some validity because it could be one that builds itself. It's entirely possible that this lurker archetype just ends up being very similar to Deep, where you put a bunch of the toss cards together. Yes, you can move stuff around, but you find the right combination, and that's where those cards belong, and then they don't get played anywhere else. This is potentially a very similar situation. This is potentially a very similar scenario because you have to have a critical mass of the lurkers. I mean, there's no other way around it. If you're playing a lurk deck, you want to increase your chances of getting the trigger, and in order to do that, you need more cards like this in your deck. Now, there are ways to manipulate it, which is one of the reasons that I'm excited, because you know me, I love trying to find ways to make predict be relevant. I always talk about how, you know, you can set up allegiance keyword triggers and things like that. Well, this is another thing you can set up. So you could, for example, play this hatchling on 1. You could play the 2/3 predict on 2, put something on the top, and then when this swings, it will trigger the lurk. That's also very relevant because this is a card that, again, it's got the fearsome keyword, and so even if you get a single trigger, it becomes a 2/1 fearsome, which is the same as Precious Pet. Precious Pet sees play and does not scale. So this could be a Precious Pet that has the potential to keep getting bigger. That is very relevant. Now, another thing to note is it is max once per round. So while you can't machine gun trigger this, you can still trigger it in your off turns with things like Blade Dance, with things like Rally. So it doesn't have to be when you use your attack token. It's just once per round. I feel like this has actually a lot of potential to be strong. I know that, again, the gut instinct is going to be that it's slow, but it's allies everywhere. This has a very Mist Wraith quality to it, and when you play things early on, they might be a little bit underpowered, but I think that the real strength of the deck is going to be like the mid game. I'm thinking like round 5, round 6, you know, if you've got 3 triggers by then, you're going to be playing units that are above par in terms of mana spent to stats and keywords. This is my suspicion anyway. Again, we've only got the 1 card, but I just really believe that this is actually going to scale. I think we're going to get enough units to kind of set up that critical mass, and then even without enough units, there are going to be those support pieces in place. So again, this is a Shurima follower. All of the predict options are there. They're going to help the archetype. Other things to consider are cards like Bone Skewer, because Bone Skewer lets you put something back on top of your deck, and now you know if you've used it on something like a lurker that you've got a lurker up there. So you can get those triggers, is what I'm saying. I do also really like that the lurk keyword doesn't require you to be attacking with a lurker or with somebody with the lurk keyword. It just has to have the keyword while it is on top of your deck. So what I mean by that is this hatchling might not be in your opening hand. Let's say you have the 1 drop that's a Dune Keeper, right? You're playing Shurima. You drop the 1 drop, you swing. This could still get the buff. So this could still just be a Precious Pet when you draw the next round, as long as it was on top when you attacked. So I really like that as well. Now, I am really excited because I think this is also going to be an archetype that gets a lot of support this expansion. What I mean by that is we know we're getting Rek'Sai, but we also know we're getting Pyke and Ekko. I think that Ekko is going to be part of something else entirely, but I think that Pyke is likely going to support this archetype as well. I think both Rek'Sai and Pyke are likely going to be, you know, lurk centered. Pyke might not be a lurker himself, but I think he's going to fit into the archetype. I mean, after all, this lurk keyword basically looks like a shark's fin. I know that it could be like a Rek'Sai fin or whatever, but if you look at that and you don't say to yourself like, hey, this is also for underwater things, you're kidding yourself. But also, it's time to look at the other reveals. So we're going to go to the graphic that has everything. Now, I know that I said that we got 3 reveals and you see 4 cards, but that's because one of them creates another card, so we're going to cover that one last. But these are the 3, and ta-da, we get another lurker, but it's in Bilgewater. So if again you remember when I said, hey, I think Pyke's going to support it, I think this just furthers it. So the other card that we got was Snapjaw Swarm. This is a 2-cost lurker, does have the lurk keyword. It is a 0/2, but it says play, I start a free attack. So it's not Blade Dance, but yes, it is exactly what you think it is. It is a free attack. And I kind of expected something like this to be coming because I noticed that there was on the loading screens in the game, like right now, references to free attacks. And it didn't feel like that was intended for something like Cataclysm, even though Cataclysm does also work that way. But this card is, in my opinion, very interesting for a number of reasons. One, it is a lurker and it's got the lurk keyword, so helps you with that critical mass. But this is one of those cards that I think sets you up for that long payoff that I was talking about, where, you know, you've got like 3 triggers and then suddenly this is, you know, a 3-2, but you get that free attack. And the longer the game goes, the more important this could be. Now, why does that matter? Well, the free attack doesn't take your attack token, and so this, even as a 3-2, can sometimes represent 3 burst damage when you're going to the round where you have your attack token. For example, if there's an open field and you don't have any units there, there's usually not a way to take advantage of that. You can't open attack because you have to play a unit, they get a chance to respond. Snapjaw Swarm is going to be one of those cards that potentially punishes that. But also, I just really like this card. I'm going to be honest. The first thing I thought of when I saw this was Destiny's Call. And I said, oh man, I can't wait to give this like +8/+8 and then just slam it when there's an open board, because I just find that funny. So keep an eye out for that. But this is also, in terms of things that I want to highlight, one of those great ways to try to trigger LURK on the turns where you don't naturally have the attack token. So you don't necessarily have a ton of rally in Bilgewater. There is some there, but this is one of the ways that you can kind of get around that and kind of keep the LURK train going, because the more triggers you can get, the better off you will be. And this card is perfect for that. I think that's going to be the real value of this card. I think that there will be times where you can take advantage of that free attack and get some burst damage in, but I think the real value of Swarm is that you are buffing, potentially anyway, your units on rounds where you did not have the attack token. But again, for me, the real story is just that Rek'Sai, Pyke, again, very likely to both be kind of all in on this archetype. I think this is going to be a lot of fun and maybe like the marquee archetype of this, just because it auto builds itself. However, we got Zilean last time and Zilean needed a lot of help. And this time we're getting Ekko, and I think that those two are going to be paired together, and I'm really looking forward to it. So the last card that we had revealed is Fallen Feline. This is a 1-cost 2/1 from Piltover and Zon, and it says when I'm summoned, create a Hexite crystal in the bottom 10 cards of your deck. A Hexite crystal is a 2-cost fast spell that my face is covering right now in the graphic, but it says if you see me in a prediction, draw me. So think like Kahiri, but instead of getting bigger, you just draw it. And then when you play it, it deals 2 damage to enemies and the enemy nexus. So it is just a big bomb when you play it. I absolutely love this card and what this potentially means for the archetype. One, this is a nicely statted 1-drop. It is a 2/1 for 1. It creates something when you play it, so even if you draw it late game, you're potentially not messing up your value. But it's also on summon. That matters because you can bounce it, but also you can do things like flicker it. So something like Ancient Hourglass, for example, means you'll get to trigger Fallen Feline again. Now that matters to somebody like me because I took a Zilean deck and I tried to find as many ways as I could to play Zilean to flood my deck with time bombs, which are like small Hexite crystals. And I had a lot of fun with that deck. It's still one of my favorite decks to play. It's not very good as far as win rate goes, but it's still a lot of fun. This I can be even more creative with because Zilean is very specifically play. You cannot, for example, like retreat return Zilean and on the return get more time bombs. You have to play him. Fallen Feline does not care how you summon it. It makes more Hexite crystals. Now, it does create them in the bottom 10 cards of your deck. So this means that you have to, in order to find Hexite crystal, do, you know, one of a number of things. You either have to draw through your deck very fast. Now this is Piltover and Zon, and so that's not outlandish, but you would have to, I think, build your deck around doing that specifically. It would have to be some kind of control deck where, you know, you're flying through cards and then you eventually hit this critical mass where you just draw like 3 or 4 Hexite crystals. And I think that a deck like that would play a lot like Go Hard, but I don't think that's the most likely scenario. The other ones are, you could do like a cool combo deck where you make Hexite crystals, and then you also play like Zap, and Zap can fetch it, but one Hexite crystal isn't exactly go hard, right? Back when Zap used to fetch go hard was a 1 cost deal 5. This is a 2 cost deal 2, so it's a bit more reined in. I think they learned their lesson from go hard, and I don't think that that's worth it either. So obviously the last archetype is predict, because you are shown cards throughout your deck with predict, and so it doesn't matter if they're in the bottom 10. If you find them, if you predict them, you're going to draw them. That's what the Hexite crystal says. So I love the idea of combining Ekko and this Hexite crystal archetype and this fallen feline with Zilean and all of those predictors, and then just finding ways to copy them, resummon them, because again, it's every time this fallen feline is summoned, and this is a follower, this is not a champion like Zilean was. So things like iterative improvement, for example, work on the feline. I'm looking forward to jamming my deck so full of Hexite crystals and then just blowing them up. And there's this really cool synergy as well. You kind of already saw it with Zilean and his own time bombs, but this is just another layer where if you manage to level up Zilean, when you play cards, you get like fleeting copies of those cards the following round. And so playing a Hexite crystal to get more Hexite crystals next round as well helps you tamper down the board. And so I think the combination of Hexite crystals and time bombs is going to be very funny, very satisfying. Like, I'm just really looking forward to this archetype after what I had done with Zilean in the past. So these are the reveals. There was honestly a lot here, in my opinion, for just getting 3 followers. Now, part of that is, you know, we're getting support for existing archetypes. We're getting shown basically an entire new archetype where we have to start speculating early on with very little to go on. But I still feel like they actually gave us quite a bit. I think there's a fair amount of meat in these 3 reveals. I think this is very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. But that's it for this video. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you as always. Tell me what you think. Are you excited? Do you see yourself trying to make Lurker work? Are you excited for the Zilean archetype? Are you just excited to see maybe something not Azir Aurelia? There's no wrong answer, but tell me about it. I do read the comments, and until next time, may you walk on warm sands.